This video is brought to you by SanDisk, makers of flash memory products including memory cards and readers, USB flash drives, and solid-state drives. Thanks, SanDisk. Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant. And today I will tell you precisely how and why I've organized my video editing workflows and the kind of gear I use to support them. Maybe dispel a few misconceptions, all in the hope that it will help you gain clarity on what really makes sense for you. With an insane production schedule every month, at least it feels like that to me, I need speed, with one whopping caveat and two minor caveats. One, I refuse to use proxy files when I edit my videos. Sure, I could save a lot of time if I were to use them instead of insisting upon editing our 4K videos in 4K, especially when grading, when applying noise reduction, which I work not to need, and when especially rendering titles, transitions, or other effects. But I work hard to get my production values the way I want them, and I therefore want to either enjoy that image quality as I edit away, look what I did, or see clearly what I got wrong in time to reshoot if necessary, like I just am doing now because the previous shirt I was wearing was dirty. The iterative nature of editing means speed saves a lot of time and aggravation. This is why the computers I use to edit need to be all that in a bag of potato chips across processing power, memory speed, volatile and non-volatile, and memory bandwidth. We'll get to capacity, reliability, and security a little bit later. Although I should add that I do limit my 4K recording to 8-bit 420 because 99% of the time I or you don't need more. And this does help. No 10-bit 422, never mind 6K or 8K raw to grind my processing to a crawl or clog up storage. 2, I don't care nearly as much about speed for anything that is inherently amenable to batch processing, like rendering a Final Cut. This is a brute force, twiddle your thumbs length render, at which point I've already exited the editing zone and might as well grab a cuppa or shift my focus to other tasks. Although, as I just said, when I am in a time crunch, then I do want the absolutely fastest completion of the render and upload as possible. So sometimes that works out to be just long enough to hit the head. Fortunately, both of my computers meet these requirements even under extreme circumstances, except when they don't. Hold that thought. 3, in between these two cases, I have a third use case where I care more about speed than when rendering a Final Cut, but less than when I'm editing. This is most typically true when I want to find and open a previous project to retrieve assets from it and add them to the new video I'm editing. This is where I need a different balance between capacity, speed, fault tolerance, and permanence. In other words, massive, cost-effective capacity at speeds sufficient to the task, which is protected from power spikes or any other kind of mechanical failure, far beyond what I can do on either computer by itself. Let's get into the weeds. 1, for video editing, I rely upon the fastest processing power feasible for me. I am price sensitive, matched to the fastest dynamic RAM feasible for me, accessed through the fastest memory bandwidth feasible for me, read from and written to the fastest storage feasible for me. This means relying, to the greatest extent possible, solely upon the computers and their internal storage, because any external data storage device will be, in some cases, dramatically slower, a function not simply of the device itself, but the connection through which the data can be transferred back and forth to the computer. Although, side note, when I say fast or fastest, I mean fast or fastest. I just don't understand, for example, how so many people get excited about 300 megabytes per second read-write speed and exclaim, "This is fast for video editing." Yeah, different strokes for different folks. But for me, 6,000 or 7,000 megabytes per second read-write speed from an onboard SSD. Now that's fast. That's what I like. With a permanently installed, unfortunately not upgradable, 4 terabyte SSD running over 6,000 megabytes per second to handle the single largest video library I might create in the foreseeable future, exceeding a terabyte already today. B, the highest 800 megabyte per second memory bandwidth available, and C, what I will call the optimal processing speed given my appetite for it, gated both by my wallet and my understanding of diminishing returns, courtesy of the greater parallelization of tasks possible by one of the highest CPU and GPU counts in the lineup. This is why my primary computer for video editing is still a 48 GPU introduced in 2022 with 64 gigabytes of RAM and a 2 terabyte permanently installed SSD with essentially the same read-write performance of the newer 16-inch. Although this is why I asked you to hold that thought. 2 terabytes is no longer big enough to swallow my biggest individual video libraries. So, while I do now use a 4 terabyte WD Black SN850X as my plan B should the need arise to edit a particularly large video, I was obviously willing to pay a hefty premium to double the capacity of that recently acquired laptop. That's because the newest NVMe PCIe 4.0 drives are only able to deliver about half their claimed maximum 7,000 megabytes per second, 5,000 megabytes per second write-read speeds respectively, gated even by the most up-to-date USB-C 4 protocol through which they are connected externally to my computers. It's only the speed of the internally mounted NVMe SSDs that truly makes me happy when I'm editing, as renders are close to instantaneous most of the time. So that takes care of cases 1 and 2 for video editing. I mean, why bother with 2 different systems for 2 different speeds when one handles both with 0 incremental cost? But what about case number 3, storing my entire video archive and retrieving assets from it without fear of it going up in smoke or slowing me down to the point of pulling out what few hairs I have left in my head? A different balance of speed, capacity, call it reliability, and freedom from futzing at a price I can afford. Enter RAID 5 on a 96 terabyte, oh baby, Thunderbolt 3, oh baby, 8-base system like Western Digital SanDisk Professional, currently on sale for just under $5,000, G-RAID Shuttle 8, using a 12 terabyte drive in each of those 8 bays. By setting aside one drive for redundancy in case of a single drive failure, and striping, that is parallelizing data across the remaining 7 drives, this is how RAID 5 works. This direct attached storage device, commonly called a DAS, delivers 84 terabytes of capacity, while achieving sustained read-write speeds in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 times the speed of any one of those disks alone. This puppy is fast and big enough for what I need today. In fact, it is just about twice the speed and exactly 3 times the capacity of its predecessor, my own 32 terabyte under the desk Thunderbolt 2 G-Speed Shuttle XL I've used for at least the last 5 years, which, by the way, I run through a big boy pants uninterruptible power supply, automatically and continuously backed up to the cloud in the background, as futz-free as I can get it. It just looks like another external drive, literally plug and play, although you have to plug it directly into the APS, no extension cords, pre-configured at the factory as RAID 5 in a single logical volume, although there are all kinds of things you can do to make it faster or more redundant or some combination of both. Thus, my standard video editing workflow is this. 1. I upload my video files to my computer's internal SSD. 2. I then import the video files I want directly into a library I've created for them, on that SSD. 3, I edit my project there. 4, I bring additional assets from other projects from my DAS. 5, I continue editing that timeline. 6, once I have a final cut, I render out to that same internal SSD if there's room, external SSD otherwise. 7, I then close up all of the libraries and exit the application. 8, I move the library for that project with associated files from the internal SSD to the DAS. 9, I delete the library and associated files from the internal SSD. 10, I empty the trash. And finally, 11, automatically back it all up to the cloud seamlessly, continuously in the background. Except when, I don't have enough internal memory on the internal SSD, as I said earlier. That's when I use the 4 terabyte WD Black SN850X NVMe external SSD attached to either computer via a USB-C 4.0 cable. What about alternatives to the kit I currently use? Let's start with my RAID system. As I said earlier, the predecessor to the G-RAID shuttle, which I've now had for at least, actually, I think it's closer to 7 or 8 years. One could have a pile of individually encased disk drives, each connected separately to one's computer as the need arose. And I did do that for a while in the early 2000s. But once I moved beyond 3 of them, it became way too much futzing and just annoyed the crap out of me. Real competition to a DAS is a NAS, a network attached storage device. And this does appear to be the current rage in large data storage. The thing of it is, I don't think NAS makes any sense for people like me. One, the whole idea of networked attached storage, that is, accessible from anywhere, has one glaring flair for my use case. There simply is no hotel I have ever stayed in where the internet speeds, Wi-Fi or direct cable, weren't terribly slow, spotty, and or time-boxed. Fast enough for photo editing and syncing, as I've already mentioned, but for video, forget about it. It's nice in theory to be able to access a large video project from thousands of miles and multiple time zones away, but good luck trying to edit it at anything other than agonizingly slow speeds. I think it makes much more sense for, again, someone in my shoes to do exactly what I've done for remote work. As I've said, let's burn this into our brains together. A, when it comes to video, either have a fast laptop with enough blindingly fast internal storage to edit locally, or use that same laptop with sufficiently fast bus-powered NVMe PCIe 4.0 storage when you don't have enough space on board, and take your project with you. That is, load it up while you still have the infrastructure that you need. Although, if you do have to go external, as I mentioned earlier, now you'll be running at literally half the read-write speeds of that same drive were it mounted internally. And I can tell you that for my own work, that's just not as fast as I'd like anyway. 2, there's just too much futzing for me when it comes to setting up and monitoring a NAS. I just want to plug it in and go. I have too many other things to stress over, and especially learning a separate dedicated NAS operating system would only add to my stress. With the G-RAID Shuttle 8, there is an easy utility for it, but it looks and acts like every other native Mac OS utility. And as I said, it comes pre-configured precisely for the RAID level I happen to prefer. Truly, plug and play. Great diagnostics too, more than I've ever had to look at. 3, there's too much processing overhead allocated to networking that I just don't need. I'm fascinated by the fact, in my experience, that NAS reviewers rarely talk about read-write speeds. And when they do talk about them, those speeds are usually somewhere between 10 and 40% slower than what I'm getting from the G-Raid Shuttle 8 back here. Although, fair enough, that's their testing, not mine. And one thing possible with an NAS, not possible with any DAS I've seen, is to double the number of drive bays to 16 for, in theory, double the performance. Two things, really. I've yet to find a hardware-based DAS that comes box only, yet this is how most NAS servers are sold. You buy the drives on your own, and I like that. On the other hand, for its intended purpose in the Batcave, the G-Raid Shuttle 8 DAS is already fast enough with 8 bays. I don't want another 8 bays. I don't want another enclosure. I don't want additional connections. I don't want more fan noise. I don't want more complexity. And I'm not sure that the speed wouldn't be throttled by the connection and additional overhead of 2 8-bay enclosures anyway. Do any of you guys out there have some solid data on this? Please just write down in the show notes below. I'd like to know. What about parallelizing NVMe PCIe 4.0 SSDs for really fast external video editing when there isn't enough internal storage? Frankly, I can make do with 3100 megabytes per second read-write speeds if I have no other choice. I mean, a couple of years ago, woohoo! And I like how small, economical, and futz-free the WD Black NVMe PCIe 4 is. But at least for now, the cost per gigabyte of a solid-state drive is somewhere between 3 and 5 times that of a hard disk drive. Couple this with the fact that the latest USB-C 4.0 connection to an external RAID system will still gate the performance of a single external SSD to about half its potential. Again, as I've said, I don't know how many times now, and I just don't see it. Although in another year or 3, who knows? I think that's enough shop talk for today. The hows and whys of my video workflows. They are not the only way to go. They are certainly not the cheapest way to go. But once again, with feeling, that's just me. Your mileage may vary. And as always, that's fine. This video has been brought to you by SanDisk, maker of flash memory products including memory cards and readers, USB flash drives, and solid-state drives. Thanks, SanDisk.